They come in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of all things, true source of light and wisdom, origin of all being, graciously let a ray of your light penetrate the darkness of my understanding. Take from me the double darkness in which I have been born, an obscurity of sin and ignorance. Give me a keen understanding, a retentive memory, and the ability to grasp things correctly and fundamentally. Grant me the talent of being exact in my explanations, and the ability to express myself with thoroughness and charm. Point out the beginning, direct the progress, and help in the completion, through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So welcome again for this third session of our course on Christian Anthropology. And as Terence was losing it, relationship with God is our topic for this evening. Last time we talked about the roots of good and evil and how Lewis presents a classic concept as the Tao, right? This idea that there's an objective moral order, that there's what in the classic Catholic tradition we would call natural law. Basically, it's the idea that goes back to Genesis, when God sets the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the center of the garden, and he says it's not for Adam and Eve to go and grab these fruits, right? Because they don't determine what is good and evil. It's God who has said what is good and what is evil in the universe according to the essence or the nature of each being, particularly the human person. So it is for us to discover good and evil as something that is already placed there by the power of creation, by the wisdom of God, not for us to invent it or design it, right? But to discover, just like we discover things through science, and then use those laws and powers that we discover, respecting them as laws and constants of nature. In the first session, we talked about the human person as microcosmos, as beings who have different layers of life, right? Vegetative life, animal life, sensory life, spiritual human life, and how human means a combination of all these different layers of life. But there's an organized level or hierarchy of life in us. There's an organized whole, right? So now we need to add another element, and that's relationship. So far we've been looking at the human individual, like all these different levels of life. When we start with this relationship with God, we should also, of course, we are created for relationship. We're created for relationship with God and for relationship with others. Of course, there's a whole chapter, and I'm going to delve into it tonight, because it's the idea that God, in His own essence, is relationship. Right? There's already in God's nature, we have the relationship of divine persons, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so it's not surprising that we who are created in God's image also have this component as essential or constitutive of our nature, that we are made for relationship, that we thrive in relationships. That we're not meant to live in isolation. So, our point of departure here is that a human person that lacks a relationship with God lacks an essential element for obtaining its fulfillment. We're made for relationship, and among the many relationships that are given us is the relationship with God. I would draw an analogy here with having a relationship with parents. The normal thing is you have a relationship with your parents. If you know them, if you know the normal things, I would know my father and mother. If I don't, well, maybe that's another reason there. But if I do, the normal thing is that I will not become estranged from them. If that happened, if I did become estranged from my father, many other things in my life could be fine. I could have a great job, I could be a great athlete, I could be successful in many ways, I could have a nice home, but something is kind of missing in my life. Something that was meant to be there is not. And I think today, this needs to be said, because today a lot of people lack this relationship with God. And they say, well, it's pretty fine, that's like a choice, I don't need it. And many things in my life are fine. I'm teaching, I'm working, I have a family, I don't need God. Well, I would say it's the same thing as the other case, as not having a relationship with your father or mother. Many things may be fine, but something is missing, something that is very important, because it has to do with our origin and our destiny in this case. We men and women are religious beings. Across all history and every culture, you see this constant. In one way or other, people seek God, seek the divine. In many different religions. However, in Christianity, there's a fundamental difference with other religions. While there's this impulse in human beings to seek their origin and God, what is the reason for the fundamental reason for our lives, that overarching meaning that gives us guidance or a frame of reference. Christianity has something unique, that instead of being our quest for God, Christianity is God coming down to us. It's God who descends, who seeks us out, who comes to our history, in our midst, and addresses us. First, of course, through a long history of prophecy, anticipations of God speaking to Abraham, the patriarchs, and Moses, and the many prophets, forming a people, and then but promising that he would come in the Messiah, finally coming in the person of Christ. And I would say that's the only way of having an effective relationship with God, is through relation, because it's having a relationship with God on my own. It's like me trying to jump and touch the sea. Well, I might try, but I will not get there. I can jump, and I'm not going to get there. I need some help. I need someone to help me. And in this case, I would need God. Even though it would be great to know who made this universe, what's the meaning of my life, how can I know the God behind all of this? But I don't know if that would even be possible on my own terms, or how to go about it. But if God came down and spoke to us and directed us, then I could have that opening, that open door where I could enter through that. And that's what has happened in Revelation, in the Judeo-Christian revelation. I think that if you want the distinctive quality of this, what this relation means, you see it mostly when you see someone going through conversion, through a change, a religious conversion in their lives. When someone has that encounter with Christ, you see the before and after. Whether that's a beginning of faith, of someone who was completely a non-believer and came to believe, or someone who had their faith awakened. And you see how things change for that person, how like a new energy is given to the person, how you find a new joy, you find a new meaning. Even things of this life are very much changed, how you think of your job and family and relationships, how you see your own skills. It did change for me very, very dramatically. I think one of the biggest changes, besides the fact that I know that life has a meaning and I can walk in that, not alone in my life. I think the biggest change eventually was seeing my own talents not as a tool for my success and my kind of isolated, ivory tower success, but as something that had been given by God to me, having in mind a mission, like God gave me the skills to help other people, and there's much greater happiness in doing that than using them selfishly. Well, but that change could not have happened in me without encountering Christ. It just didn't happen. And it only took place when I, through the grace of God. So people who have experienced such a type of conversion, they say, well, now God is at the center of my life. I know that my life has new meaning. I still have the same personality and traits and family and situation that I had before, but now everything is like, it's lit up, it's changed in some way. The world is not a hostile place anymore, because I know it comes from that one person that I know loves me and cares for us. And of course, this has a great, some people think, well, why is this in anthropology? Well, because that's, if we are asking what is the biblical understanding of the human person, well, this is it. You cannot understand men or women severed from God. It would be like understand the paradigm of the human person as an orphan, or as an orphan person. Well, that's not the reality. It's like an abstraction. You as having this origin from a father and a mother, and certainly for siblings and other people, but certainly having that originating relationship. So we cannot just take the human person out of that context, which is fundamental. So a correct Christian understanding, a biblical understanding of men and women is within the framework of this relationship. And there's two key quotes that you want to look at. If you ask, what is that? Well, there's many, but there's two important ones here. I'm sorry, I forgot about the conversion quote. Genesis 1:26. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness." The famous Latin phrase, imago Dei, right? The image of God. We are made, Adam and Eve were created in the image of God, after the likeness of God. Many exegetes kind of point to the plural as possibly like an anticipation of the Trinity, the doctrine of the Trinity, which is not obviously revealed in the Old Testament, but it's already hinted at in some passages. So God said in plural, now let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness. And many have mentioned also that we better resemble the image of God than when we live in relationship. Right? Just in an isolated way, but in relationship. And the other quote here is Colossians 1:15. Letter St. Paul to the Colossians. He, Jesus in this case, is the image of the invisible God. So Christ is the image of the invisible God. The word in Greek there is, Jesus is the icon of the invisible God, right? You cannot see the Father. You can see Jesus, who is the living icon. Like, icon in Greek is image. So the translations many times say image, but you could also translate it more literally like an icon of God. And what it means is that, when I mentioned at the beginning about Gaudium et Spes 22, in Christ we have the image of God, but also the perfect human being. If, you see, can you imagine Jesus as the perfect human being, like not praying, isolated from the Father? Well, no. His life is defined by that relationship, by that mission that the Father has given him. And so what that means, that's part of human life. A human life that is lacking in that, it's lacking something that is essential. If Jesus has it, then that's for everyone, in a sense. Because he is the model of humanity. He's the model of what a human person is. Now, some people might say, well, but Jesus is not just human, he's God, and therefore it does not apply, it doesn't follow, because he's not really like human. He's a different category. And I would say, well, yes and no. He's not just human, but actually he's the only 100% human. Because people say, well, he didn't have sin. How can he really be human if he didn't have sin? Well, don't forget the following. Sin is not part of who we are. Sin is a distortion of human nature. It's like undoing what we're supposed to be. And therefore, not having sin, like Jesus, doesn't mean that you're less human, you're this kind of super, Martian or something. You're not really, really one of us. On the contrary, I would say because of not having sin, he's the only really human. He's the 100% human. Now we might be 75%, 88% human, 91% human, but because many times we fail in living in a truly human way by sinning, by not really following what we know is best, that we don't attain that 100% of humanity. But Jesus does. And in Him we discover that an essential part of human life is to live in that conversation, in that back and forth with the Father and the Holy Spirit. And many times the Lord wakes up in the morning and goes off to a certain place to pray, to be in the presence of the Father, to gain direction, to refocus in what's essential. Now, from this perspective, I'd like to complete some of the things I mentioned in prior sessions. So first, about the human person as a microcosmos. We remember we had this scheme of different levels of life. We talked about ideas and intelligence, the will, and decision and freedom, and the passions, emotion, and how they are interrelated, they're balanced. The passions are meant, if in a right order, passions are meant to always have this work in agreement with will and intelligence. It is natural for us to eat, not simply when we feel hungry, but when we also realize it's appropriate. I'm not interrupting, I'm not eating in the midst of what I shouldn't be eating. I'm waiting for my family to eat with them. So we eat in a human way, in integration with intelligence. I don't eat like a dog, just jumping into my plate on the floor, right? So there's this kind of harmonization of intelligence, will, and passion, for example. I think we're integrated in that sense. And if I would follow my passions without any sort of reflection of the mind or any decision of my will, well, I would be having a problem. If there's some area in my life in which my passions completely overrule the way I judge, well, I know I should be going to finish my homework, do stuff, but I have such a compulsion for, social media that I cannot really get to it. It grasps my attention completely. Well, I have an issue. Right? That passion has kind of broken its own boundaries, to say. Or my will same thing with my will. My will couldn't just go against what my mind sees as true and reasonable and objective, right? If I realize, well, I'm not the best to do this task in my company or in my family, but I want to do it. But I realize I'm not. This other person should be doing that. Shouldn't be my role. I'm not the most qualified for that. But I'm just, stubbornly insisting. I want to do it, and it causes a lot of tensions and problems because my will is like overruling what I see as objective, as something that should be reasonable there. Okay, but this is not the whole picture. Now we need to add this other element. That in order for this harmony to be complete, there's also God as the one who guides the whole ensemble, if you want. Now, because a danger of just watching this idea of our persons of having this intelligence, will, and passions in the different levels of life is to think that this is an autonomous sort of team, right? I don't respond to anyone, and just simply, as long as there's this coordination between what I feel and what I think, and my conscience, and my convictions, and my actions, that's enough. As long as there's consistency in my life, that's fine. But that's what Sartre said. Remember the class last time that Sartre said, if God is not there, everything is allowed. I can do anything. Everything is permitted. The only thing that Sartre would say is be consistent. Whatever you choose, be consistent with that and do it to the end. So Sartre would very much agree, in a sense, with the idea of that sort of harmony there. He would say, just be consistent with yourself. But we as Christians think that doesn't work. Our minds need guidance. This is like a political body, if you want. Plato would love that analogy. The idea of the soul is like a city. It has its governance, it has its sages, its people, its army. Okay, but it does not give itself its own laws, its own guidance. It needs that direction from someone who is above, and that is God. In a way, the mind reason is supposed to guide our souls, right? It's supposed to be the light, the eye that guides the soul. But the light comes from above. And if my reason does not want to be guided by God, if I sever myself from God, and then my mind pretends to be the one that rules everything in my soul, my body, my passions, my emotions, my will. Well, what ultimately will happen is that those powers will rebel against my mind. It's like if my intention says, well, I don't bend my knee before anyone. I'm sovereign king of my own universe, and I rule. Well, then all these other powers in me say, so do we. Like, who are you? If you gave us an example, a leading example, we'll follow suit. And that's the tragedy of original sin. Like Adam and Eve disobey God, but then they find that all creation disobeys them now, right? The earth doesn't yield its fruit, their bodies now and feelings rebel against what they want to do, and so there's all this kind of chaos because the king of creation himself has disobeyed, right? The creator, the God of the universe. What is the danger in this regard? In a biblical view, of course, we might think that if you take God out of the picture, if you do this, you will go into an atheist framework, right? You have this secular, atheist view of human life and society. But that's not the view of the Bible, right? When the Bible opposes, what do you see as an alternative to having God ruling? The Bible always speaks of a different kind of problem, and they call it idolatry. Like, it says, we will always have someone in that spot above. If we don't obey God, we'll end up putting something else in the place of God. Some creative power will take that place. Because we were made to seek something beyond ourselves, something that, some sort of power or idea. And if we take God out of the picture, something will tend to occupy that place. Whether that be money and power, whether that be sex, whether that be pleasure, whether that be, glory in human glory or fame, whatever that be. And that thing which we put up there is not necessarily a bad thing. It is turned into a destructive thing precisely by demanding that it will be God now. It will be my lodestar in life, or my ideal above everything else. Peter Hitchens, he's the brother of Christopher Hitchens was this well-known atheist speaker, writer, journalist, very vocal against Christianity and the church. Maybe less known is his brother Peter, who was also an atheist, a Trotskyist atheist, and journalist for many, many years. But later in life he reverted. He came back to his Anglican faith, became a very convicted Christian, Anglican. And he would, of course, have this back and forth with his own brother Christopher. And he wrote this book, kind of in response to Christopher Hitchens, called The Rage Against God. And why he could explain why did this atheism happen to him, basically. And he says, when he comments on this and says, when I abandoned God as a teenager and became more and more secular in my mentality, I thought I was completely atheist. I wasn't. I had a sort of God there. And he said, and it was national pride, the pride of being British and Churchillian England, and this idea of this kind of pride in my own country and civilization, that we were now the West and Europe were like the most developed civilization in history. And that for me, and defending those values of secular mentality, those things for me took the place of God. He tells in his conversion story that he went as a journalist to Russia and to Somalia. And the one in Somalia was, he says, many things convicted him. There's a picture of the Last Judgment that he saw in France one time. Many things kind of spoke to him. But one of the elements that were very, very important in his journey is being an atheist. He had placed great value in a well-ordered society, and said education, reason, science, tolerance, and good discussion will lead human beings to a better situation, right? And a better society, an improvement, a betterment of society. And once you get to there, he thought, well, you're pretty much solid, you become stable. But then he saw societies where, for example, like Russia, where God had been eradicated very intentionally. And he saw a lot of degradation in the fabric of society, and how the impact that those decades of atheism, of very much directed atheism had had. And one that caught his attention was Somalia. He went there as a journalist, I think in the 80s. And he was there in the capital city, or one of the cities, and he was assigned to take some interview authorities. And then he went back in the Civil War. And he took 15 years later, after the first assignment, bomb-shelled buildings, and everything was gone, right? It was chaos. And then when he came back and with the pictures, he remembered that it had been the same street he had been at 15 years before. He compared the pictures, and those 15 years earlier had been, beautiful streets with lined trees and police officers with gloves and this beautiful big telephone cabins and all that. And then he saw the same street just 15 years after that in the Civil War. And something that came to him with that is how frail society is. He thought of the civilized world and Western civilization as something so tangible and solid and unshakable. And then with those things, in those assignments to those two countries, so how fragile civilization is. And what he got to him is how fragile my own idol is. Where I place my security in this, and not having God anymore so clearly in our society, our world, that social order and harmony could collapse very, very quickly. And he said, well, whatever my country does, I need to return to God. It was a big turning point for him. A symptom I mentioned last, I think I want to insist on this one because it's very common. A symptom that we were made for God is that when we walk away from God, there's a sort of restlessness in our hearts. St. Augustine said famously in the Confessions, "You made us, Lord, for you, and our hearts will be restless until they rest in you." It's like we're a bird that doesn't find where to land. There's no tree, there's no place where there's no branch you can really land on. Right? So you're constantly hovering over things, but the moment you kind of think this is happiness, here it is, you find no, it doesn't really support your weight, and then you fly off to some other thing. Maybe next time, maybe the next thing. And there's this restlessness of the soul, like we haven't found what's truly fulfilling and solid. Now, why does it happen to us that in our world today that so many people doesn't seem to have this hunger for God? I think it manifests itself in that restlessness of spirit. So it's not explicitly like a hunger for religion, but it's a kind of restlessness. There's something that's not quenched. But then St. Gregory the Great, in his time already in the late 6th century, he asked the same question: why some people don't seem to care about faith? And the answer he gave, 1400 years ago, was because we have this capacity for God that if we don't nourish it, if we ignore it for a long time, it can become blunt. And this organ to sense what is from God can be spoiled and atrophied. especially when it's engrossed in material things. We have this heart that is made for God, but the more we just want to stuff it with things, and possessions, and pleasures, and distractions, it becomes atrophied, and it becomes more kind of unable to really, we numb that spirit. It's no longer able to perceive or desire. Still, I think that the symptom is persistent. There is that restlessness, that it's a sort of numbing, but there's some bottom line lack of peace. In relationship with the second theme last week, we talked about the Tao or natural law. We talk about laws of conscience that rule or guide human life. But in a sense, God overrides the rule. A relationship with God overrides these rules. Now I put it a bit drastically because it doesn't mean I don't mean to say that God is like ignores the Ten Commandments or says, well, just don't observe them or something like that. Of course, God would not go against the commandments and guidelines that He has created for us. But in a certain sense, our relationship with God transcends them a bit. Especially in this sense, that God may ask us, in a true relationship, may ask us to do something that is not contained in rules, cannot be possibly contained in rules. For example, He called Abraham, leave your native country, go to the land that I will show you. There's no 11th commandment that says at 75 you will leave your country. Or to Moses, go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh. Nothing says that after tending the sheep you will go and confront the emperor or something like that. Or to David, I'm anointing you as king over my people. To Jeremiah, you will say what I command you and speak to them in my name. To Jonah, go to Nineveh and proclaim and prophesy like this. And then Jesus called His disciples, come follow me. Leave what you have and follow me. That's not a general rule, like just anyone follow me, but something you discover that is personally addressed to you in this relationship. So this is the kind of the unique thing about Christianity too, that even though God says, well, these are general things, He says to the young man, follow the commandments, honor your father and mother, don't steal, don't commit adultery, be honest, be truthful, don't lie, and so on. But still, the living God is in a certain sense unpredictable. God is never going to ask me something that is going to result in my harm and my destruction, obviously not. But at the same time, we cannot put God in a box or in a 5-step plan. He's never going to go out of this. No, at times, the living God is sort of just jumps out of those schemes. But we usually think in things that are very predictable. When I finish my degree, and I get this job, and I form my family, and this and that, and I follow the pace of society around me. Well, that's, I would say, in general, happens pretty much. My life could continue just like the Shire, very calm, very predictable. But at times, God's voice says that I should join the community of the ring, because there's grave dangers out there, and I need to leave that safe environment of our shores and just plunge into this adventure, right, into the deep. Well, who can anticipate that kind of morality, if you want? But that's what I should be doing. A great Christian philosopher that pinned this down very nicely was the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. So he has this idea of the 3 stages of life there's the aesthetic man, the ethical man, and the religious man. So the ethical follows the rules, what you should do and must be done, but the religious one follows God's law. Right? Of course, he kind of puts it in very, very striking terms, but this is the idea. In that relationship with God, there are some things in the relationship that go just beyond what is expected everywhere. And that's also happens in a marriage, in a friendship. There are some things I need to do for my spouse, for this kid, for my child, for my daughter, for my brother. That cannot be simply put in a rule. It's just like, this person requires this of me. And this is the way I need to love him, or I need to love her. So a few concluding remarks here, and we can go now to a few questions. So first, 4 clear principles. We have them here? No, I don't have. Anyhow. So we were created to live in a relationship with God. That's part of who we are. If we don't, we were made to worship God, and if we don't do that, we will worship something else. Some idol will take the place. Second thing, when the relationship with God is taken out of the equation, that divine image in us is blurred. Our own function is compromised. And it will cause damage to other relationships, like the family, society. The conversion process, number 3 here, conversion process of returning to God then follows the other way, right? If we will restore that connection with God, and then that restores the image of God in us. It restores the harmony among our different powers, and restores the different relationships around us. And the fourth, that path of conversion is not an easy one. Of course, restoring that harmony, even though it's the right thing, it's the original thing, is what was meant to be. Once it has been broken or damaged, it's not an easy process. It can be painful, it can be difficult. Just like, for someone who's on drugs to change, go back to the healthy situation, it takes a lot, because that person not only needs to go through withdrawal, but also they probably need to confront whatever issue pushed them into the drugs in the first place. So it's not easy, but it's actually the solution. Just increasing the dose of drugs is not going to help you to do better. Okay, so let's have a time for questions, Q&A. Questions, Sebastian?
Yeah, so when we were talking about God in relation to our 3 aspects of human life, passions, will, and intelligence, isn't the voice of God given to us in part through our conscience? And above that, doesn't I was always taught through catechism that Christ is in part within us.
Is
in part within us, in our heart, right? So how then is it always we look up instead of looking in for those sorts of perspectives, moral perspectives?
So conscience is one of the ways in which we hear God's voice in moral things. But it's not enough. Conscience, if it's a healthy conscience that has been well formed and it's in good shape, you can pretty much follow the conscience as God's voice to guide you in moral issues, what is right and what is wrong in my life. However, revelation in Christianity it goes beyond that, because it's a knowledge of who God is. It's like knowing the face of God, knowing the attributes, knowing how does God relate to us? What is important to God? What does He want from us? What does He want me to do in this particular? Which at times, as I mentioned in the last point, it may go beyond the merely good and evil. There may be different good paths, and I'm not sure which one. Morally, they all are good and bad and possible, but maybe in my prayer and discernment of faith, I can realize that this is the one that God wants to guide me into. Now, what you say about God, Christ being in our hearts through, for example, through divine grace, right? The gift of grace, which is the indwelling of the Spirit, it's not opposed to Him being up. In a sense, we look up because God is greater and more powerful and wiser than we are. So in a sense, we depend on God. God is higher in that sense. it's not opposed to him being very intimate, very close to us as well. Not as someone guiding us from the outside or like an alienating voice, but as someone who created us, fashioned us, knows us, and so therefore he acts in a very intimate way without doing violence to our will and to our hearts. So I think both can be held together. Yes?
We talked about St. Gregory saying that this desire for God can be quenched over time by other things. So there's also the concept that the further you are from God, God comes looking for you. So I think, but I know from experience that it is true that if you get lukewarm, you don't recognize God calling you. I'm trying to see the thing with the good shepherd going after the sinner.
So that if you're away from God, your heart becomes hardened, but still God is seeking for you all the more, right? So I think both things are true, but it doesn't mean that it becomes more difficult for God to reach you because as a sinner you become more hardened or more rebellious against God. God seeks you out, but chances more that for that voice to get through to you, it may take more. It may be more challenging. Maybe for some people it won't happen because they won't accept it. I think that at times, I don't know, in God's wisdom, at times, that's when many would say God may even use a crisis or a time, something that it's going to shake someone's foundation or to show them this is not the road, this is not the path. There's a great book by Lewis called The Problem of Pain, in which he says, God speaks to us in our joys, and I don't know what else, and then he screams in our pains. So at times it's like, we wouldn't want suffering, and God wouldn't want suffering, but at times it's like a megaphone, because only when we hit that moment of crisis, we finally accept even someone who's very stubborn in bad ways, they would accept that they cannot go on like that. And so there's something that needs to change. No, even suffering, it's not a guarantee that the person will respond. I would say I don't think it's universal that many times that life will carry you to a painful situation, but not in every case. So I wouldn't make that a universal law. And some saints would say that that's the greatest misfortune is the success of the sinner, in a sense. That's the worst condemnation. Like you are away from God, you're like heading towards destruction, but you're doing fine. Because nothing will even alert you that you're in a bad path. You're not really, you live this very selfish, self-centered, bad life. But things seem to be going very well for you in a worldly sense, right? So yeah, you're right, Julie, that it's hard to balance those two things, and I think it's in God. That is part of the divine providence and how God deals with each individual person. So there's a bit of unpredictability and mystery in that. Yes, yeah.
So how can you help a person who is selfish and self-centered and a way to see the love? It's certainly difficult at that. The closer the person to you, the more difficult it is.
How you can help a person see that. I would use that's a lot of what we try to do when we evangelize. But at times I would say, well, some people are more sensitive to helping others around them. So by helping those in clearly, like in the homeless or those who are chained by addiction or orphaned children, maybe or the sick, that's a way in which someone's heart may be open to overcome selfishness. For others, I know in my case it was pretty much God, like knowing God, which helped me turn around, discover other things. But for some people, it can be a relationship of love, where maybe when they fall in love, they realize that there's something that shakes them, forces them to go beyond themselves, their interests, like look beyond their own just selfish perspectives or interests. So I don't think there's a single road, but you have to try whichever will work for a person, hoping that they will not close the door to every one of them, but there's one possibility that one of them will resonate with them, they will open up, right? But I don't know. There's no single way to do it. Ricardo and Jim.
I think Jim was first.
Jim, okay. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I just had a couple things that have been sticking in my head, and it's all sort of connecting. You mentioned Sartre a couple times, and one of his famous quotes from one of his plays always sticks in my mind: "L'enfer, c'est les autres." Hell is other people, right? And ironically, I think part of my own conversion process, that unexpectedly jogged me to realize I'm too influenced by other people. A lot of the problems I'm having is because I care what other people think rather than what God thinks. And so it's kind of odd to come from Sartre that I would be inspired in that way. But that's how God works, right? Unexpectedly. And then it leads me to think of, it's written, the stone that the builder refused will be the head cornerstone. So I don't know what the question is exactly, but it seems to fit into this natural law relationship. And how do you get that light to somebody, and I think it's always totally unexpected. Sometimes it's the most unexpected things that you would never imagine. Right. And
Your relationship with others, there's different layers, but for example, relationship with other people can become idolatrous. They could become, in a sense, too much the center of my life, and therefore be destructive for myself and for the person I'm putting in that place. Because I'm saying to this person, maybe my son, my spouse, my dad, say, you're God to me, and therefore, you got to be there for me always, and do what I need you to do. And then a second level is relationships damaged by sin. So of using each other or a sort of codependency. They can also be very painful, very unhealthy, and very, very traumatic, right? So I think that's the ones that Sartre was referring to, those kind of wounded, unhealthy relationships that will become like a head, very, very rarefied and very just distorted, very obscure environment. Something I didn't mention now because it's connected with the topic next time is the idea of freedom. Why do I need to bind myself to certain relationship if I want to be free? Right? Because I lose my freedom by binding myself. But my response to that is that my freedom was meant to be given or invested in certain relationships, and sort of kind of severing every bond, every bond, severing every bond of relationship that would kind of tie me to someone. That doesn't make me free. That doesn't free me up. That's a sort of. It's like having this voucher to go anywhere in the world, free flight, but never take it. Because I want to keep it open, right? So I don't tie myself to anyone because I want to be free. Well, what are you free for? You're free. You were made for love and to find that freedom was given us the possibility to really cultivate those connections with God and others in ways that will bind your life to some people, concrete people. Look at Jesus. I'm amazed that he, being God, could go everywhere, anywhere, with the speed of light. He was just a friend with Peter and James and John and this group of people, the fishermen and tax collectors, and stayed in that tiny area. They were so committed to this particular, environment because you cultivate those relationships with your family, those around you, your friends, disciples, guides, mentors, and those become the meaningful relationships that constitute who you are. So there, that kind of is, I think, is also a distortion of freedom, that severance of all relations. Of course, we have to choose discern and choose relationships carefully, but it's not possible to just relinquish them completely, right? That would be inhuman. It would be sort of, again, an abstracted human being. Ricardo, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question, but regarding the concept of relationships, I always think about the Greeks and the concept of being from the Greeks, that you can be from the individual because most of it you are through your relationships. If you don't have relationships, you're not. So I think that it's quite fundamental. My question is more in the area of our relationship with God, and can you be religious without knowing God? And I ask that question from the perspective of how we think of someone like Baruch Spinoza, and even more going back to the first letter to the Romans, when Paul talks about, I think it's 2:12, when he talks about basically that even those that do not know God, if they have the law in their hearts, by that law they are living in God. So is that relationship with God, if you don't know Him?
Yes.
Still, Paul seems to say it's not necessary to live the life that God calls us to live.
So I would say that it's not going to be if you don't know God, it's not really a full relationship. You know, there's something missing, because part of a relationship is that you know one another. I think that's the reason why God chose to reveal Himself. I mean, He sent the prophets and He sent His Son, because otherwise we couldn't really know His person. We wouldn't know Him in person in that way. And it's important for us to know that. Now, there's a genuine people who want to be religious and they seek God to the best of their abilities without coming to know God. I mean, it's a noble effort. It's a good impulse. Now, there's something still missing. So there's nothing. It's not that we should condemn the impulse and the effort to do the best that people can do without having come to know revelation. But it's still something is missing. Something is. It's like saying, it's like getting into a relationship with someone where I don't really know the other person. It's like maybe I think I'm understanding my significant other, friend, etc., but I don't really get to understand who they are. There's some distortion in their relationship. Maybe the other person is giving me the wrong signals, or maybe I'm just projecting something of my own on the person, but for some reason I don't get to the person's heart. And therefore I just think I cannot relate to this idealized version of the person rather than the real person. Well, something like that could apply to religion. You know, some people may say, well, I really want to relate to God, but they have this kind of different, distorted idea of God. They haven't come to know God. And so you don't relate to the real God, you relate to this idea of what is good.
May I say one?
Yes.
One other thing. My problem is with that. I understand where you come from, but my problem is that I always was taught that faith is God's gift. So it is. I can search God, but if I don't have that gift from God, and when we say that kind of argument, it seems to put the blame on the person, that the person is not seeking far enough, or is not looking far enough, or not open far enough, and we have all that cultural background in us. Yeah. So maybe it creates with me
There's both situations happen, and in both situations there's a loss in both of them, because ultimately you don't have a relationship with God, but or at least it's not full. It's not. But one is better, because one of them is, well, it's not your fault. You're not willfully being in that place. Right? It's like you're missing your dad, but nothing that you did wrong about it. You're still missing him. Let's go ahead. Sorry, Sebastian. There were some questions over here. Catherine, I think Joanne. Did you have a question, or someone, Adi, or someone there? Yeah. Please. Joe and Anita and Joanne. Why don't we go this way, Joe, and we'll conclude with the section there. 3 more questions there. Is that okay? Because otherwise we'll go over. So,
okay.
Joe.
So in my Christian walk, I've come to a question of confusion, a point of confusion about this concept of being in relationship with God and my brothers. There's a modern explanation that we all are in the same family, right? Irregardless of religion, we're all brothers and God is our Father. In the Christian understanding I read from the Bible, God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the brotherhood we share is in that Christian teaching. So, does it matter? I mean, how do you integrate or separate those two different models? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So no, good. I think I get it. So the question is how are we bound together as one family? Does it matter to be part of the faith or not? Something like that. You know. Yeah. It's. I mean, ultimately, it's one of the big complex issues. I mean, we have a connection because of the same nature. We have the same origin in God. We have the same human nature, the same dignity, and ultimately the same call to salvation, to communion with God. Okay? I would need a lot more time to go into the whole explanation, but it's something like, initially God created a design that was meant, you were born into the human race in communion with God, just by being born human. Right? It was automatic. You were part of the family just because of that. But if you want, that original plan was kind of broken because the original sin introduced this distortion. And now we pass on a flaw of human nature, one that is lacking in that connection with God. Okay? So what God did is, St. Paul would say, is save us through the locura, or like but it's not crazy. The foolishness, yeah, thank you. It's the foolishness of preaching of the cross, right? So that since he says, well, okay, you humans have destroyed mankind, but now, so what I'm doing is I'm calling Abraham and beginning a new people that will respond to me by faith, by covenant. And all will be invited to the covenant, right? But it's more of a, okay, it's God humanity has gone astray, God creates this new seed, this new sprout within humanity of calling by faith people to enter into a covenant with Him, not now just being born into this covenant because it's broken, but by coming to know Him and accept that covenant. Okay, so He starts with a series of covenants with Noah, and then with Abraham, and then with Moses, but the ultimate covenant will be the one in Christ. Everyone will be invited to enter that covenant. And that's when you enter that more intimate brotherhood, if you want, or family. Because the first one was intended to be there, but was broken. And you know, it is very strong. We share a lot of things. I mean, when you travel across the globe and you different cultures, and you always have something that we can grasp very quickly about each other just by being human. But at the same time, we see all the distortions of humanity because of sin. And so God says, well, he says, I won't just abandon this world to itself. I will not refashion it from the beginning, because we cannot just go back to the beginning. I think the wisdom of God was to choose to let's send my voice into this world to create a new people out of faith. And everyone will be called to that, to form part of that. I will call my children just to follow me, to respond to my call, to believe in me, be baptized, to enter into this family, which is the spouse of my son. I think it's a bit daunting. It's a bit of an incredible path. In fact, St. Paul calls it the foolishness of preaching, of the proclamation of this message. Right? Okay, so that's it would take a lot of time to go into all the details of that, but that's kind of more or less the gist of the story. Anita.
Look, I've had situations where people have said, "Oh, I'm Catholic, but I'm not a practicing Catholic," and then I don't know how to respond. And according to what you learn here, you either have a relationship with God or you don't. So, what are these people saying to me when they say, I'm Catholic, I'm not practicing Catholic? Do they, I don't know, sometimes I don't know how to respond.
Well, I would try to find the ways, the words that would most encourage them to try to check their faith. To give it a try, to go deeper. Obviously, if you look practical, my first impression, well, that must be very boring. Whenever you go to Mass, it must be probably very just tiring or boring. I mean, if you don't really invest in that relationship, it's not very exciting for you. But if you knew, as Jesus would say to the Samaritan woman, if you knew the gift of God, you would have asked that, you would have wanted that. if you knew what God has in store for you. It's such an amazing thing to know. And so why miss it, right? I think most people who live in that rejection of God, they don't know what they're missing. They don't really know, right? They reject many times what they don't know. And so they need to kind of give it a try, trust those who have that connection with Christ to say, well, this is amazing. Why wouldn't you want to know God, right? And final words that would most encourage the person to try out. Joanna.
I guess just going off of what Anita just said, maybe praying to God to to exchange your heart for His, and kind of instead of seeing their statement as that's different from what I believe, just praying to be Jesus to them in some way, shape, or form. But that kind of leads me into my point, which was you were talking about how people can get a distorted idea of God. And I have a brother who he went to the seminary when he was 15, and he has a master's degree in theology from Christendom, and he's atheist now. And I guess the hard thing for me is just wondering, I guess what you were saying too about knowing Jesus. It's really hard if you know Jesus to not feel compelled to go back to Him, or to feel sadness once you've known Him and then go away from Him. I'm just curious, what is, in your opinion, the best way to kind of view somebody so close to you and to
So there's the tact and prudence of each case. Better as a sister, but I would say that probably someone who was well into the faith and knew so many things, or knows so many things. Maybe the root of the problem is not sort of objection or ideas. It's more in the realm of passions. We saw there are some maybe even some very bad experience or some situation that really was disturbing or difficult for him. Some kind of maybe one that he suffered, or maybe one that he walked into by his own bad decision or something. So whatever happened, I sense that something probably happened there, right? That therefore that caused this malfunctioning really in the soul, and then therefore the mind couldn't really accept. These ideas were there, but it's how can this be with all this chaos inside of me, in my life? It doesn't fit, right? So at the time you choose maybe one path or the other. Either you say, well, God is real, God is there, this is still what is true and about, but that means I need to fix this chaos and try to make any sense out of it. Or sense, well, no, this chaos is the real thing in my life, and therefore all these nice ideas are just kind of an invention, right? So I think one thing to do is maybe try to, if you have an access to that, say, well, maybe at some point, maybe there's a possibility of talking about what having him process what happened in his life, or what triggered those things. And, because also there's always a call. There's always, I think, this idea that the Lord is seeking him. He's calling your brother to return, to see things differently, to open his heart to grace.
And maybe somebody hasn't actually reached out. I think a lot of times it's easy to assume somebody else is talking to them, or somebody else will take charge.
Yes, yeah. So I think you need to kind of see, whatever triggered that turning away from God in his life, and then try to see if you can, well, at least pray for him. Yeah. But then I think it has to do with that.
It might have been college itself. Because when I was in college, I started to lose my faith. When I took brain behavior, I found out that when people die, it's not a great light of God, it's the serotonin dump. And it's just the brain bracing itself for death. And I just saw a lot of kids there go from faith to non-believing. So maybe he got too much of an education. It could be, but I hung on. I held on to my faith through college, regardless of learning a lot of things about brain behavior and stuff like that.
I think my perspective is, I think I'm still learning, but you can rationalize the existence of God but we cannot really rationalize the nature of God. So I think that when you think too much to try to know God through rational, it becomes very far away, and that's the way that I try to approach God rationally, and I always get lost.
Yeah, well, you have to remember this also, that even no matter how articulated and smart atheism may look to some people, actually have a tremendous lot to explain as an atheist, and it's almost a magical thinking in its own way to say that explain this world with no intelligent cause behind it. Well, I mean, you're you're assuming a lot of things there. You're just saying, well, this just happened, and it doesn't seem to, it's as much as you could think of believers as believing too much. Well, to be an atheist in such a universe, you have also believed too much. You're also believing too much. So let's take a break here. Let's take 10 minutes, and we'll go to a text by Caesar's. Yeah. We're going to read the text together and then a discussion like we did last time.
Okay. There's a story about a schoolboy who was asked what he thought God was like. He replied that as far as he could make out, God was the sort of person who was always snooping around to see if anyone is enjoying himself and then trying to stop it. And I'm afraid that is the sort of idea the word morality raises in a good many people's minds. Something that interferes, something that stops you having a good time. In reality, moral rules are directions for running the human machine. Every moral rule is there to prevent a breakdown or a strain or a friction in the running of that machine. That is why these rules at first seem to be constantly interfering with our natural inclinations. When you are being taught how to use any machine, the instructor keeps on saying, no, don't do it like that. Because of course there are all sorts of things that look all right and seem to you the natural way of treating the machine, but do not really work. Some people prefer to talk about moral ideals rather than moral rules, and about moral idealism rather than moral obedience. Now, it is, of course, quite true that moral perfection is an ideal, in the sense that we cannot achieve it. In that sense, every kind of perfection is, for us humans, an ideal. We cannot succeed in being perfect car drivers, or perfect tennis players, or in drawing perfectly straight lines. But there is another sense in which it is very misleading to call moral perfection an ideal. When a man says that a certain woman or house or ship or garden is his ideal, he does not mean, unless he is rather a fool, that everyone else ought to have the same ideal.
In such matters, we are entitled to have different tastes and therefore different ideals. But it is dangerous to describe a man who tries very hard to keep the moral law as a man of high ideals, because this might lead you to think that moral perfection was a private taste of his own, and that the rest of us were not called on to share it. This would be a disastrous mistake. Perfect behavior may be as unattainable as perfect gear changing when we drive. But it is necessary. It is a necessary ideal prescribed for all men by the very nature of the human machine, just as perfect gear changing is an ideal prescribed for all drivers by the very nature of cars. And it would be even more dangerous to think of oneself as a person of high ideals, because one is trying to tell no lies at all instead of only a few lies, or never to commit adultery instead of committing it only seldom, or not to be a bully instead of being only a moderate bully. It might lead you to become a prig and to think you were rather a special person who deserved to be congratulated on his idealisms. In reality, you might just as well expect to be congratulated because, whenever you do a sum, you try to get it quite right. To be sure, perfect arithmetic is an ideal. You will certainly make some mistake in some calculations, but there is nothing very fine about trying to be quite accurate at each step in each sum. It would be idiotic not to try, for every mistake is going to cause you trouble later on. In the same way, every moral failure is going to cause trouble, probably to others and certainly to yourself. By talking about rules and obedience instead of ideals and idealism, we help to remind ourselves of these facts.
Now let us go a step further. There are two ways in which the human machine goes wrong. One is when human individuals drift apart from one another, or else collide with one another and do one another damage by cheating or bullying. The other is when things go wrong inside the individual, when the different parts of him, his different faculties and desires and so on, either drift apart or interfere with one another. You can get the idea plain if you think of us as a fleet of ships sailing information. The voyage will be a success only in the first place if the ships do not collide and get in one another's way, and secondly, if each ship is seaworthy and has her engines in good order. As a matter of fact, you cannot have either of these two things without the other. If the ships keep on having collisions, they will not remain seaworthy very long. On the other hand, if their steering gears are out of order, they will not be able to avoid collisions. Or if you like, think of humanity as a band playing a tune. To get a good result, you need two things. Each player's individual instrument must be in tune, and also each must come in at the right moment so as to combine with all the others.
But there is one thing we have not yet taken into account. We have not asked where the fleet is trying to get to, or what piece of music the band is trying to play. The instruments might be all in tune and might all come in at the right moment, but even so, the performance would not be a success if they had not been engaged to provide dance music and actually played nothing but dead marches. And however well the fleet sailed, its voyage would be a failure if it were meant to reach New York and actually arrived in Calcutta. Morality, then, seems to be concerned with three things. First, fair play and harmony between individuals. Secondly, with what might be called tidying up or harmonizing the things inside each individual. Thirdly, with the general purpose of human life as a whole, what man was made for, what course the whole fleet ought to be on, what the tune of the conductor of the band wants it to play.
You may have noticed that modern people are nearly always thinking about the first thing and forgetting the other two. When people say in the newspapers that we are striving for Christian moral standards, they usually mean that we are striving for kindness and fair play between nations and classes and individuals. That is, they are thinking only of the first thing. When a man says about something he wants to do, it can't be wrong because it doesn't do anyone else harm. He is thinking only of the first thing. He is thinking it does not matter what his ship is like inside, provided that he does not run into the next ship. And it is quite natural when we start thinking about morality to begin with the first thing, with social relations. For one thing, the results of bad morality in that sphere are so obvious and press on us every day. War and poverty and graft and lies and shoddy work. And also, as long as you stick to the first thing, there is very little disagreement about morality. Almost all people at all times have agreed, in theory, that human beings ought to be honest and kind and helpful to one another. But though it is natural to begin with that, if our thinking about morality stops there, we might just as well not have thought at all. Unless we go on to the second thing, the tidying up inside each human being, we are only deceiving ourselves.
What is the good of telling ships how to steer so as to avoid collisions if, in fact, they are such crazy old tubs that they cannot be steered at all? What is the good of drawing up on paper rules of social behavior if we know that, in fact, our greed, cowardice, ill temper, and self-conceit are going to prevent us from keeping them? I do not mean for a moment that we ought not to think, and think hard, about improvements in our social and economic system. What I do mean is that all that thinking will be mere moonshine unless we realize that nothing but the courage and unselfishness of individuals is ever going to make any system work properly. It is easy enough to remove the particular kinds of graft or bullying that go on under the present system, but as long as men are twisters or bullies, they will find some new way to carry on the old game under the new system. You cannot make men good by law, and without good men, you cannot have a good society. That is why we must go on to think of the second thing, of morality inside the individual.
But I do not think we can stop there either. We are now getting to the point at which different beliefs about the universe lead to different behavior. And it would seem at first sight very sensible to stop before we get there and just carry on with those parts of morality that all sensible people agree about. But can we? Remember that religion involves a series of statements about facts, which must be either true or false. If they are true, one set of conclusions will follow about the right sailing of the human fleet. If they are false, quite a different set. For example, let us go back to the man who says that a thing cannot be wrong unless it hurts some other human being. He quite understands that he must not damage the other ships in the convoy, but he honestly thinks that what he does to his own ship is simply his own business. But does it not make a great difference whether his ship is his own property or not? Does it not make a great difference whether I am, so to speak, the landlord of my own mind and body, or only a tenant responsible to the real landlord? If somebody else made me for his own purposes, then I shall have a lot of duties which I should not have had if I simply belonged to myself. Again, Christianity asserts that every individual human being is going to live forever, and this must be either true or false. Now, there are a good many things which would not be worth bothering about if I were going to live only 70 years, but which I had better bother about very seriously if I'm going to live forever. Perhaps my bad temper or my jealousy are gradually getting worse, so gradually that the increase in 70 years will not be very noticeable. But it might be absolute hell in 1,000,000 years. In fact, if Christianity is true, hell is the precisely correct technical term for what it would be. And immorality makes this other difference, which, by the by, has a connection with the difference between totalitarianism and democracy.
If individuals live only 70 years, then a state, or a nation, or a civilization, which may last for 1,000 years, is more important than an individual. But if Christianity is true, then the individual is not only more important, but incomparably more important, for he is everlasting, and the life of a state or a civilization compared with his is only a moment. It seems then that if we think about morality, we must think of all three departments: relations between man and man, things inside each man, and the relations between man and the power that made him. We can all cooperate in the first one. Disagreements begin with the second and become serious with the third. It is in dealing with the third that the main difference between Christian and non-Christian morality comes out. For the rest of this book, I'm going to assume the Christian point of view and look at the whole picture as if it will be if Christianity is true.
Thank you, Jessica and Michael. That was great. Okay, so moments we have left for this evening are now discussion time. And there's a nice set of questions at the end. However, I would suggest that for our discussion, we use questions number 1 and 4. Okay? One is pretty much straightforward. The 4 requires a bit more imagination and creativity there. But so go first to number 1, and then if you have the time, maybe spend 10 minutes on that one, and then go to number 4. Why don't we do what we did last time? So let's have the odd number rows turn around, face each other. Okay. I hope you had a good time in the discussion. It was fascinating to see, in this 3 parts of morality by Lewis. It was very fascinating to see how we came full circle with some things, because the human person is microcosmos. We talked about in the first session was this idea of the inner order of each ship and the fleet, right? And then he introduced this idea of the second element, which was the interactions, the social interactions, which is the most evident section of morality. And then the third, which is our orientation towards an ultimate meaning, an overarching meaning of human life. And that was the kind of the topic we talked about today. So you see how all the different components are kind of coming together. So this is very fascinating. Just to clarify something, anthropology is at the foundation of ethics, right? The reason why we talk about ethics, freedom, and morality is because if you want, anthropology is the underlying foundation. Ethics, the good, what is good and evil, is ultimately defined. What is the human good? That's how you define it. According to what is human happiness about? What is human flourishing? What is the truth human flourishing? According to that idea of man that you have, that's what will define morality. Right? And then anthropology is also connected with theology. Because we say, well, if you're made in the image of God, a right understanding of God will give you the right anthropology. So you see how these different components kind of start interlocking, right? And so that's why even though the course is in anthropology, we have these references to morality, to theology, because you cannot isolate them completely. You have to keep them in relationship. Okay, so let's wrap it up for tonight. Next session on May 9th will be the final one, the fourth on freedom. Okay, it's a very important concept next week. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good night. Thank you.